Have you ever wondered about the intriguing situation of Cain, one of the first sons of Adam and Eve? According to the biblical narrative, how did he find a wife? And even more curious, how did he have a child, considering that Adam and Eve were the only progenitors of humanity? By examining the details of the Bible, we will uncover answers to this fascinating mystery. I invite you to subscribe to the channel, give a like, and join us on this revealing journey. Cain, a central figure in biblical narratives, is portrayed as the firstborn of Adam and Eve, marking the beginning of humanity. His relationship with Abel, his younger brother, becomes crucial in the episode of the sacrifice to God. Both present their offerings, but divine acceptance falls only on Abel's, leaving Cain's rejected. The reason for this divine refusal remains enigmatic, generating various interpretations throughout the centuries. Some believe the issue lay in the nature of the offerings, while others suggest that Cain's attitude may have been the decisive factor. The rejection provokes a growing bitterness in Cain, culminating in the first human tragedy in the Bible. Overcome by jealousy and rage, Cain commits the terrible act of fratricide, taking Abel's life. This event, besides representing the first manifestation of human frailty and the severity of sin, resonates throughout history, leaving a profound mark of the biblical narrative as a warning about the consequences of our choices. God responds to Cain's crime with a severe punishment. He curses him and marks him, making him a visible sign of his transgression. This mark, although not clearly described in the Bible, symbolizes the separation and the burden of sin that Cain would carry for the rest of his life. God's punishment goes beyond the physical curse, extending to psychological and emotional consequences. Cain is condemned to wander as a vagabond, far from the divine presence. This exile leaves him at the mercy of his own conscience, bearing the weight of his destructive choice. Distant from God and human companionship, Cain becomes a solitary wanderer, a symbol of spiritual and emotional alienation. He fears being killed by others who cross his path, a concern that reveals the profound weight of his curse. However, God places a mark on him, ensuring his protection against any mortal revenge. This divine act not only preserves Cain's life, but also symbolizes God's mercy, even in the face of the consequences of his actions. Here arises the first question for many skeptics. Who were these others that Cain feared so much? Were Cain and Abel not the only children of Adam and Eve? Hold on, young grasshopper. We will find answers to these questions further on. Continuing, in chapter 4 verses 16 and 17, we discover that, even as a wanderer, Cain finds a woman and establishes a marital relationship. From this union, a son named Enoch is born, marking the beginning of a new generation descended from Cain. Surprisingly, Cain not only survives the divine punishment, but also decides to build a city, naming it after his son Enoch. This act reflects his determination to create a legacy, challenging the adversities of his wandering condition. However, the biblical narrative omits explicit details about how and with whom Cain established his marital relationship. There is only the vague information that Cain knew his wife. The hypothesis of other human beings coexisting with Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel arises as an interpretation that seeks to fill the gaps in the biblical narrative, addressing the expansion of humanity. Some unconventional interpretations suggest that God may have created other human beings besides Adam and Eve's family. This theory, although speculative, attempts to reconcile the biblical narrative with archaeological and anthropological evidence pointing to the existence of broader human communities in antiquity. However, the most widely accepted interpretation is that Cain may have married one of his sisters. The book of Genesis does not specify that Adam and Eve had only Cain and Abel as children. The lack of details may suggest that they had other children explicitly mentioned in the Bible. Families at that time were large, and the longevity of individuals, like Cain, who lived for hundreds of years, increases the plausibility of a larger offspring, including unmentioned sons and daughters. This interpretation gains strength when we examine Genesis 5-4, which mentions that Adam had other sons and daughters after the birth of Seth. In that context, marriage between siblings was not only acceptable, but also necessary for the propagation of humanity. There were no explicit prohibitions against these unions at the time, and the demands of survival may have shaped this practice. Various examples in the Bible show marriages between close relatives, such as Abraham and Sarah, who were half-siblings, and Isaac, who married his cousin Rebekah. These unions were culturally accepted and even blessed by God, as described in Genesis 24. After the flood, Noah and his family repopulated the earth, and his sons also married among themselves or with their sisters. These examples show that, at different stages in biblical history, marriage between relatives was a common and necessary practice. Later, with the multiplication of humanity, laws prohibiting marriage between relatives emerged as part of the covenant with Moses. These regulations, described in Leviticus 18, reflect an emerging need to protect genetic health and prevent risks associated with inbreeding. Interpretations may vary among religious traditions, but it is important to remember that, regardless of the differences, respect for tradition and submission to divine will are fundamental principles. True understanding lies in the acceptance of God's word. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell.